Your daily actions shape everything in your life. The small decisions you make every morning, every hour, and every evening determine whether you move closer to your goals or drift further away. Today, you're going to discover practical strategies to take control of your routines, sharpen your focus, and build systems that guarantee progress. You'll learn how to break big goals into actionable steps, design routines that happen automatically, and remove the obstacles that silently hold you back. By the end of this video, you'll have clear methods to track your progress, stay consistent even on low-energy days, and turn habits into tools that protect your priorities. This is the kind of insight that turns intention into results. Stick around, apply these steps, and watch how small, deliberate actions compound into real measurable growth. Subscribe to Audiobook Shift for more strategies that transform your daily life. Number 1, break goals into daily steps. If a goal sits on a shelf and waits for inspiration, it never becomes anything but an idea. A goal becomes real when the next step is small enough that you can do it today, when the plan moves from possibility into the muscle of your day. The clearest distinction between people who reach important things and people who keep dreaming about them is not talent, time, or money. It is the ability to reduce big outcomes to the next physical action. That reduction is the point where intention meets reality. Start there. Picture a goal you care about. Finish a book, build strength, save for a trip, launch a project. Now imagine a calendar filled with vague promises about working on it. That calendar is noise. Replace the noise with a single atomic action you can complete today. Write one paragraph, do one set of squats. Move $5 into a savings envelope. Open the project folder and name the first file. The immediate visible completion of one small thing rewires the brain. It produces a tiny, honest proof that progress is possible. That proof is the fuel for tomorrow. Break the goal into daily steps by working backward from the finish line and then forward in time. Be concrete. Decide what the end product looks like, then slice that product into pieces, so small they are unmistakable. If the end product is a 60,000-word manuscript, think in terms of 500-word sessions, not write chapters. If the end product is running a 10K, design daily runs measured by minutes or routes, not track. If the end product is saving $3,000, make a weekly deposit schedule, not save more. The brain understands behavior it can picture. The mind resists vagueness. Give the mind clear, visible checkpoints. Create a rule for each day that removes deliberation. Decide the time and location for the daily step and commit to performing the step in one context. For example, at 6 a.m., at the kitchen table, write 500 words. Or after lunch, walk 20 minutes. Or every Friday evening, transfer $30 to a savings account. When the action is tied to time and place, the decision becomes a habit cue. That cue eliminates the morning argument with yourself. Discipline is easier when choice is replaced with a routine. Keep the steps microscopic at first, especially on the days when resistance is strongest. There is enormous power in a 2-minute rule. When something feels hard, scale it down to a 2-minute start. Read one page. Write one sentence. Do one rep. More often than not, once the first 2 minutes pass, the mind relaxes and the session expands. If it doesn't, the 2-minute action still counts as completion, and that counts. The key is to make the step small enough that the mind cannot convince itself to skip it. Use concrete tools that make progress visible and incontrovertible. A simple checklist, a physical calendar with X marks, a plain spreadsheet, or a habit tracker app will do. Track the smallest meaningful unit, words written, minutes trained, dollars saved. The human brain responds to patterns and streaks. When progress is visible, the streak creates a quiet force that nudges behavior forward. The tools are not magic, they are honest mirrors. When you see a streak broken, act before blame grows into surrender. Adjust the step rather than abandon the goal. Design daily steps that protect momentum, not ego. There is a temptation to equate effort with identity. Tell yourself and others about a grand plan and the mind feels temporarily noble. That is counterfeit progress. Real progress is measured by completed tasks. If pride demands big, dramatic sessions, Temper it by splitting those sessions into small, repeatable actions. Commit to the smallest durable unit that still produces forward movement. Over time, those units compound into work that would have seemed impossible on day one. Plan for variation and failure. The Stoic approach accepts that some days will be short, chaotic, or unusable. Prepare a fallback. If the planned 45-minute session cannot happen, commit to 5 minutes instead. If travel or sickness interrupts the schedule, reduce the requirement rather than dropping it entirely. A broken plan tends to become an abandoned plan. A reduced but persistent plan keeps momentum alive. Create 2 tiers: the standard daily step and a rescue micro step. The rescue micro step keeps the streak intact and preserves identity as someone who shows up. Anchor the daily step to an existing habit when possible. Habit stacking simplifies adoption. After brushing teeth, write 1 paragraph. After brewing coffee, open the project folder. The existing habit provides an automatic cue, and the new step rides on that automaticity. This reduces the number of choices the brain faces. Over weeks, the new step moves from deliberate effort toward effortless routine. Make the daily step emotionally and sensorially real. Visualize the scene where progress happens: the chair, the light, the sound of keys, the weight of the pen, the smell of the room. When the habit is grounded in sensory detail, it becomes part of lived experience rather than an abstraction. The memory of the small action accumulates into a sense of identity. I am someone who sits and writes at this table, or I am someone who runs at dusk. Identity is not an idea, it is a pattern of repeated moments. Create a simple weekly reflection that connects daily steps to meaning. Every week, take 5 to 15 minutes to review what was completed. Ask 3 questions: what moved forward, what blocked progress, and what small change will make tomorrow easier. The purpose is not to produce long reports. It is to keep the system adaptive. When the steps are too big, shrink them. When the steps are ineffective, clarify the action. The weekly check prevents small inefficiencies from calcifying into habits of avoidance. Use accountability strategically. Share the smallest next step with a real person, a partner, a colleague, an accountability group. Publicly committing to one small action increases the cost of skipping it and gives the social environment a role in maintaining discipline. The request should be specific and small. I will send a 1-paragraph update today is better than I'll work on my book. Accountability works best when it targets the next atomic action, not the distant result. Understand that daily steps are not a straight line. Progress is lumpy. A string of successful days will be followed by a setback. The Stoic response is to return quickly to the next small action without moralizing the slip. The path forward is a sequence of choices, each small, each recoverable. Do not look for heroism in one moment. Look for fidelity across many moments. Fidelity to the daily step compounds into competence, then into craft, and finally into achievement. Translate feelings into adjustments, not verdicts. When motivation declines, do not conclude that the goal is wrong or personal willpower is failed. Instead, examine the step. Is it unclear, too large, or poorly timed? Adjust the context, move the time, change the environment, reduce the unit. When energy spikes, use that window to do slightly more, but keep core identity anchored to the smallest unit. This approach protects action from mood swings. Finally, remember why the daily steps matter. The daily action is the daily promise to yourself that the life you want will be earned by small, disciplined acts. Each completed step builds not only progress toward the goal, but also the internal architecture of a person who can deliver on promises. The practical benefit is obvious. Projects finish, bodies strengthen, savings grow. The deeper reward is the steady increase in self-trust. Consistently doing the small things rewires identity from I hope to I do. That change is slow and invisible at first, but relentless. Over months and years, it becomes a life that matches intention. Begin tonight by translating one of your goals into a single specific action you can complete tomorrow. Decide the time and place. Make it 2 minutes, if that is what will happen. Track it in a visible way. After completion, mark it done and feel the small, honest satisfaction of a promise kept. Repeat the process tomorrow. Over time, the daily steps will carry the weight of the goal. They will turn ambition into habit, habit into craft, and craft into results. The work is simple, not easy, steady, not spectacular. That is the Stoic path to achievement. Number 2, design routines that run automatically. Humans spend a shocking amount of energy deciding what to do next. Every choice, no matter how small, pulls on attention, drains willpower, and chips away at focus. The secret to high achievement is not just doing the right things, but arranging life so that the right things happen automatically. Routines are not about rigid schedules or mechanical living. They are about building a framework where the most important actions no longer rely on momentary willpower. Designing routines that run automatically means converting intention into action without hesitation, friction, or endless deliberation. The first step in creating automatic routines is to identify the actions that have the greatest impact on your life. Not all tasks carry equal weight. Some activities are small but essential, others massive but rarely executed. Focus on actions that compound over time. The daily pages written, the steps taken toward a health goal, the emails sent that move projects forward. Once you know which actions matter, the goal is to embed them into daily life in such a way that skipping them feels unnatural. Automation begins with context. The environment you inhabit silently directs behavior. Place the tools of your actions where you cannot ignore them. A notebook on your bedside table, a filled water bottle at your desk, a workout bag by the door. Context acts like a gentle but firm nudge, eliminating the need for repeated conscious decisions. The easier the action, the more likely it will be performed consistently. Design your surroundings so the first step of each routine is obvious and unavoidable. Habits are the building blocks of automatic routines, but habits alone are insufficient without structure. Start by sequencing actions logically. Pair one habit with another to create a seamless chain. After brewing morning coffee, review your daily plan. After lunch, go for a brisk walk. The mind responds well to repeated sequences because the brain begins to anticipate the next step, reducing friction and making the routine effortless. When one step triggers another naturally, you no longer need to rely on memory or reminders. The routine runs itself. Time specificity is critical. Assigning a fixed time for each action increases consistency and lowers the chance of procrastination. This is not about perfection, but predictability. By anchoring routines to a reliable temporal structure, you reduce the mental load of choice. The brain craves predictability. Predictable patterns create psychological safety, making adherence far easier. A morning routine executed at the same hour every day becomes a non-negotiable part of the day, a quiet ritual that sets the tone for everything that follows. Start small. Automatic routines fail when they demand too much too soon. Focus on building 1 or 2 routines that can run without conscious effort before adding complexity. Each routine should require minimal motivation to start and deliver immediate clarity or benefit. Over time, small routines link together, creating a web of actions that naturally drives your life forward. Trying to overhaul the entire day at once overwhelms attention and willpower. Begin with one small, high-leverage routine and expand gradually. Reduce decision fatigue wherever possible. Every extra choice consumes willpower, which is a finite resource each day. Automatic routines bypass this problem. Pre-decide meals, exercise sessions, writing blocks, and email times. When the structure is clear, the mind can focus entirely on execution, creativity, or reflection rather than logistics. Discipline becomes sustainable because it no longer demands constant mental energy. Action is built into the framework of life itself. Consistency is reinforced by simplicity. The more straightforward a routine, the more likely it is to survive interruptions. A 5-minute meditation, a 10-minute walk, or a single paragraph written daily are simple enough to maintain even during disruption. Complexity invites procrastination and excuses. Automatic routines thrive on clarity and brevity. Every added layer of decision-making risks breaking the chain. Strive for the simplest version of the routine that still moves the needle towards your goals. Monitor outcomes without micromanaging effort. Automatic routines are designed to run independently, but reflection ensures that the routines remain effective. Weekly reviews allow for minor adjustments, shifting timing, refining steps, or addressing bottlenecks. The goal is not perfection in each action, but consistent forward motion. Reflection without guilt is essential. Examine results, tweak the routine, and return to the system. The routine must serve the purpose, not the other way around. Anchor routines and identity. Actions become automatic when they are consistent with the person you see yourself as. A morning run is easier to maintain if you identify as someone who prioritizes health, just as writing becomes effortless if you see yourself as a writer. Identity-driven routines are less vulnerable to motivation because they rely on self-perception rather than temporary feelings. Each repetition reinforces identity, and identity in turn fuels repetition. The loop builds momentum that cannot be easily undone by fleeting doubt. Anticipate obstacles and design contingencies. Life is unpredictable, and routines must be resilient. Prepare a version of each routine for times of disruption. Travel, illness, work emergencies. Have micro-routines that can be executed in 10 minutes or less. Maintaining a skeleton version of the routine preserves the automatic behavior, prevents regression, and keeps momentum alive. The goal is continuity, not perfection. A routine that adapts rather than collapses in response to obstacles is truly automatic. Automation is also about sequencing energy and attention. Align routines with natural rhythms of alertness and focus. High-energy tasks, like writing or problem-solving, belong in the periods when focus is highest. Routine maintenance, like tidying or administrative work, fits better in lower-energy windows. This alignment ensures that automatic routines are sustainable, avoiding reliance on sporadic bursts of willpower. The body and mind operate efficiently when the right task meets the right energy level. Accountability can amplify automatic routines. Share your routine with a peer, a coach, or a group who can monitor progress. External observation increases the cost of skipping actions and adds subtle social pressure to maintain consistency. This does not replace intrinsic motivation but enhances adherence, making the routine more robust. When your routine is both internalized and externally visible, its resilience increases dramatically. The emotional effect of automatic routines is profound. Completing a set of predetermined actions daily creates a sense of mastery and stability. It turns chaos into order and uncertainty into predictability. When the day starts with meaningful movement, writing, or reflection, the mind perceives competence before motivation even kicks in. This emotional reinforcement strengthens commitment, making the routine self-reinforcing. Finally, remember that automatic routines are not a substitute for thoughtfulness. They are a foundation, a structure that supports focus, creativity, and long-term goals. Once the basics run automatically, energy can be spent on higher-level tasks, strategy, creation, or meaningful relationships. The routine becomes invisible scaffolding that holds the important work while freeing the mind from constant micromanagement. Begin by selecting one small, high-leverage action that moves your life forward. Determine the time, location, and sequence for that action. Place any necessary tools in the environment, so the first step is unavoidable. Test it, refine it, and commit until the action becomes automatic. Over weeks, let that routine grow, then add another, building a chain of behaviors that runs reliably every day. Eventually, the automatic routines form a web of consistent, meaningful behavior that propels every area of life without reliance on fragile willpower or fleeting inspiration. Designing routines that run automatically is not about removing humanity or spontaneity. It is about ensuring that essential actions are embedded in life so deeply they execute themselves. The process requires thought, intentionality, and patience, but the result is freedom. Freedom from indecision, from procrastination, and from wasted energy. In this freedom, focus thrives, progress compounds, and the life you intend begins to unfold naturally, effortlessly, and relentlessly. Number 3. Remove friction from every task. Every day, tasks accumulate in life like tiny weights on the shoulders. Some are simple, some are complex, but all of them demand a mental or physical action to move forward. What separates people who consistently achieve from those who struggle is not always the size of the goals. It is the smoothness of the path. Friction in a task is anything that creates resistance, hesitation, or delay between intention and action. Reducing friction is not about avoiding effort. It is about removing the unnecessary obstacles that prevent consistent movement toward meaningful outcomes. Every barrier eliminated is energy preserved for progress, creativity, and mastery. Start by observing where resistance naturally arises. Tasks often fail not because they are difficult, but because the first step is unclear, inconvenient, or tedious. A complicated setup, a missing tool, or an ambiguous starting point can make the mind recoil. The key is to make the initiation of any task effortless. If writing requires opening multiple apps, finding a document, and clearing distractions, the mental friction alone is enough to delay action indefinitely. Simplify this by pre-arranging everything necessary before the task begins. Open the document in advance, clear the workspace, and eliminate decision points. The moment you sit down, the action flows naturally. Physical friction is tangible. If a running path is cluttered, a bike is missing a part, or a desk is messy, the energy required to start multiplies unnecessarily. Organize your environment so the physical motion of starting is minimized. Lay out workout clothes the night before. Place books or tools within immediate reach. Have a charging station ready for devices. The fewer movements and obstacles standing between you and action, the more consistently the task is completed. Every second saved in preparation compounds over days and weeks. Digital friction is just as powerful. Long login processes, scattered files, or convoluted workflows sap focus and motivation. Streamline your technology. Store documents in predictable folders. Use templates to reduce repetitive setup. Automate repetitive communications where possible. Each adjustment that decreases clicks, scrolling, or searching multiplies efficiency. Technology should serve action, not obstruct. Simplify decision-making wherever possible. Decisions, even small ones, consume mental energy. The classic example is clothing choices. Having a dozen options every morning adds unnecessary friction before even leaving the house. The same principle applies to meaningful work. Standardize routines, create checklists, and predetermine sequences so that no action requires a debate about how or when to start. The brain performs best when it can operate on autopilot for repetitive tasks, while conserving focus for creative or strategic work. Break tasks into the smallest possible units. Large, intimidating tasks create friction because the mind anticipates struggle and delays initiation. Reducing tasks into micro-actions eliminates psychological barriers. Instead of organize the office, the first step becomes pick up 5 items from the floor and place them in the drawer. Instead of write reports, start with open a new document and write the title. Each micro-action is immediately doable, producing instant movement and reducing procrastination. Momentum is created by doing, and doing is only possible when friction is low. Prepare contingencies to minimize interruptions. Friction often appears when unexpected obstacles arise. Anticipate likely problems and arrange solutions ahead of time. If a printer might jam, keep spare paper nearby. If a client call may require a document, have it ready in advance. If a workout might be skipped due to fatigue, have a shorter version prepared. Planning for disruptions ensures that even when the day is unpredictable, the path to action remains smooth. Simplify access to necessary information. Research, data, or instructions can block progress if not immediately available. Store frequently used information in easy-to-reach locations. Use apps or folders that consolidate resources. Index papers or digital files, so you never have to hunt for the next step. Every second spent searching is lost momentum, and repeated delays train the brain to resist starting the task at all. Reduce this friction, and starting becomes natural. Examine habits for unnecessary steps. Often, routines evolve to include tasks that were once necessary but now serve no real purpose. These hidden steps are friction disguised as tradition. Eliminate any action that does not contribute meaningfully to the outcome. Review processes critically. What can be skipped? What can be automated? What can be combined? Efficiency does not require rushing. It requires cutting away what does not move the needle. Leverage tools to bridge gaps. Any device, app, or method that reduces manual effort contributes to lower friction. Timers, reminders, and automated scheduling reduce the mental load of remembering. Templates, preloaded documents, and checklists reduce the cognitive work of starting. Each tool acts as a lever, transforming effort into action without additional resistance. The cumulative effect is immense. Small reductions in friction multiply across tasks and days, producing significant results over time. Understand the emotional dimension of friction. Friction is often amplified by hesitation, fear, or self-doubt. When the first step feels hard, acknowledge that the resistance is part of the process, not a personal failing. Remove tangible obstacles first, and emotional friction often diminishes. Completing a small, frictionless action generates confidence that powers the next one. Over time, the accumulation of easy starts produces resilience and momentum. Review and refine routines continuously. Friction is rarely static. Changes in environment, workload, or personal energy require adaptation. Periodically audit tasks. Observe where delays occur, what triggers avoidance, and which steps feel cumbersome. Adjust processes, relocate resources, or simplify sequences to maintain smooth execution. The effort invested in reducing friction once continues to pay dividends daily. Combine friction reduction with habit formation. Once an action is simple, accessible, and easy to start, repetition builds automaticity. Repetition reinforces identity. I am someone who writes daily. I am someone who exercises consistent. Automatic behaviors reduce friction even further, requiring no thought, only presence. By linking reduced friction with repeated action, the brain stops resisting the task entirely, and the routine becomes effortless over time. Monitor for overcomplication. Success often invites additional layers of complexity, more steps, more rules, more tracking. Guard against this by asking whether each added element genuinely facilitates the task or simply adds friction. Simplicity is the ultimate form of sophistication and productivity. The fewer unnecessary obstacles, the greater the likelihood of consistent action. Friction can also be preemptively removed by creating next-step readiness. End each session by preparing for the next one. Leave materials ready, clear the workspace, and outline the immediate next action. When starting again, there is no deliberation or setup required. This continuity reinforces flow and ensures that momentum is preserved from one session to the next. The cumulative effect of removing friction from every task is profound. Days become smoother, energy is preserved, and consistency becomes achievable. The mind spends less time debating, resisting, or planning, and more time doing. Progress is no longer dependent on rare spikes of motivation, but on a predictable, frictionless system that reliably produces results. Begin by identifying one task that consistently feels like a struggle. Trace the friction back to its source. Missing tools, unclear starting point, or extra steps. Resolve that source immediately. Take the first action and notice how much easier completion feels. Expand this principle to other tasks, and over time, the effort required to maintain productivity decreases while output grows. Every barrier removed increases the likelihood that action, not delay, becomes the default. Removing friction is not about eliminating effort or taking shortcuts. It is about streamlining the path so that effort is focused entirely on meaningful progress. When the friction is gone, the mind and body can apply energy directly toward the goal. Tasks no longer feel like obstacles but steps along a clear, achievable path. The accumulation of small, friction-free actions transforms ambition into achievement, dreams into reality, and intention into results. One smooth, deliberate motion after another. Number 4. Set triggers to start actions. Every day presents countless opportunities to act, yet too often the mind hesitates. The gap between intention and action is where goals stall. It is one thing to know what needs to be done, but without a reliable mechanism to prompt action, knowledge remains dormant. That mechanism is the trigger, a signal, event, or cue that prompts immediate execution of a desired behavior. Setting triggers is about designing life so that starting becomes inevitable, eliminating hesitation, and creating a seamless bridge between thought and action. Triggers are most effective when they are specific, visible, and unambiguous. A trigger must be impossible to ignore. The alarm that signals morning exercise, the post-it note on a laptop reminding to write, or the placement of running shoes next to the door, all serve as concrete signals. When triggers are thoughtfully positioned in the environment, the mind responds automatically, bypassing the endless debate of motivation or willpower. The action becomes a natural response, a reflex of preparation and design. The first step in implementing triggers is to anchor them to existing behaviors. Humans are creatures of habit. Our brains are primed to respond to consistent sequences. Pair a new action with an established one so the familiar habit becomes the cue for the new behavior. After brushing teeth, meditate for 5 minutes. After making coffee, review the top 3 priorities for the day. By piggybacking on established routines, the brain requires minimal conscious effort to transition into the new action. This is not coincidence. It is design, leveraging the natural rhythm of existing behaviors to create consistency. Triggers are most powerful when they occur in a predictable context. Consistency reinforces expectation. If an action is triggered by a specific time or place, repetition builds automaticity. Over days and weeks, the mind anticipates the action as naturally as it anticipates waking up or eating breakfast. The result is reliability. When the trigger appears, the behavior follows with minimal friction. Predictable triggers reduce cognitive load and free mental energy for more complex tasks. The specificity of a trigger determines its effectiveness. Vague cues fail because the mind can rationalize avoidance. Exercise sometime today is easily postponed, while put on running shoes immediately after breakfast is concrete and immediate. Clear triggers leave no room for interpretation. They convert abstract goals into actionable steps. The clearer the instruction embedded in the trigger, the more reliably the action is executed. Precision transforms intention into execution. Triggers can also be visual or environmental. Objects, colors, and placements carry unconscious messages that guide behavior. A water bottle on the desk signals hydration. A journal on the bedside table signals reflection. A lined notebook on the kitchen counter signals planning. These physical reminders leverage the brain's capacity to respond to visual stimuli. Action becomes associated with context, and context becomes a silent ally in maintaining consistency. Emotional triggers are equally valuable. Emotions drive decisions more powerfully than logic alone. Recognize emotional states that naturally prompt specific behaviors, and pair them with productive actions. Feeling restless? Go for a walk. Feeling energized? Write the first paragraph. Feeling anxious? Journal for clarity. Harnessing the emotional state as a trigger allows the mind to respond naturally, converting energy into constructive output rather than letting it dissipate. Digital triggers can reinforce habits and maintain focus. Alarms, notifications, and scheduled reminders act as precise cues in a busy day. However, digital triggers must be designed thoughtfully to avoid overload. Use triggers selectively for high-value actions, ensuring they prompt behavior rather than distract from it. The goal is not more alerts, but meaningful prompts that compel execution without introducing cognitive friction. Set triggers for preparation, not just execution. Often, failure arises from lack of readiness, rather than lack of desire. Preparing the environment in advance creates a preemptive trigger for action. Lay out exercise equipment the night before. Open the writing document in advance. Preload ingredients for a healthy meal. These preparations act as invisible triggers. The moment of initiation requires almost no deliberation, and the first step is obvious and effortless. Micro-triggers can create momentum for larger actions. Tiny, easy-to-complete steps, initiated by a trigger, often lead to more extensive engagement. Begin with a single paragraph, a single push-up, a single page. Once initiated, continuation is psychologically easier. The trigger breaks inertia and activates a flow state. The first motion is the hardest. Once the mind and body are moving, progress accelerates naturally. Consistency and repetition cement triggers into automatic responses. When an action is repeatedly paired with the same cue, it becomes ingrained. The trigger becomes invisible, yet reliable. Over time, initiating the desired behavior requires no conscious thought. The process is silent, seamless, and unstoppable. Automatic response to triggers reduces reliance on motivation, making progress inevitable even on low-energy days. Triggers should be layered when possible. Combining multiple cues can strengthen habit formation. A specific time, location, visual cue, and emotional state together create redundancy, making it harder to miss the action. For example, morning sunlight, environmental, the sound of an alarm, auditory, a specific playlist, emotional, and the placement of running shoes, physical, together trigger the same behavior, going for a run. Layered triggers reinforce execution, making consistency more resilient to disruption. Review and refine triggers periodically. Life evolves, and triggers must remain relevant. A cue that worked last month may lose effectiveness. Observe which triggers reliably produce action and which fail. Adjust placement, timing, or context as necessary. Maintenance ensures that triggers remain sharp and functional, rather than becoming background noise. Attention to this process preserves automaticity over the long term. Triggers also work when combined with accountability. Sharing the cue and intended action with a partner or group increases commitment. Knowing that someone else is aware of the planned response strengthens adherence. Social reinforcement interacts with environmental and temporal cues to create a multi-layered system that ensures action even under fatigue or distraction. Embrace redundancy to protect against lapses. Design triggers so that if one fails, another activates the desired behavior. If a visual cue is ignored, a digital alert or auditory signal can serve as a backup. Redundancy is not waste. It is insurance for the most important actions. Important goals deserve multiple paths to execution, ensuring reliability even in the presence of obstacles. Triggers become increasingly effective when tied to identity. Aligning cues with the person you wish to become amplifies adherence. A person who identifies as a writer naturally responds to seeing a notebook on the desk. A person who sees themselves as disciplined responds to the alarm signaling exercise. Identity primes behavior, and triggers serve as the immediate call to act in alignment with that identity. The emotional impact of using triggers is substantial. Each completed action reinforces confidence and self-trust. Knowing that a system exists to prompt a behavior removes anxiety about procrastination or forgetfulness. The predictability of triggers instills a sense of mastery and control. Over time, life feels less chaotic, and progress toward meaningful goals becomes visible and tangible. Begin implementing triggers by choosing a single high-leverage behavior. Identify a clear, unavoidable cue that will initiate action immediately. Prepare the environment, assign a time or context, and remove potential obstacles. Execute consistently and observe the effect. Over days and weeks, extend the system to other areas, creating a network of triggers that ensure your most important behaviors happen reliably, regardless of motivation. Triggers are not crutches for weakness. They are strategic tools for deliberate living. They remove ambiguity, eliminate hesitation, and convert intention into action. By designing life around triggers, starting becomes automatic, momentum is preserved, and goals progress consistently. Triggers transform unpredictability into structure, chaos into order, and intention into results, creating a life where action is inevitable and achievement is a natural outcome of preparation and design. Number 5. Track progress with simple tools. Progress is invisible until it is made visible. Without a way to track what is actually happening, effort often feels like spinning wheels, and even the most disciplined work can lose momentum. The human brain craves feedback, proof that actions are producing results. Tracking progress transforms abstract goals into tangible data, creates accountability, and fuels motivation by revealing the trajectory of achievement. It is not about obsessing over every detail. It is about creating a simple, clear reflection of effort and outcomes that keeps the mind aligned with purpose. The first principle of effective tracking is simplicity. Tools do not need to be complicated, digital or high-tech. A pen and notebook, a spreadsheet, a habit tracker, or a calendar marked with X's is enough to create clarity. The goal is to see progress at a glance. Complexity adds friction, which delays or derails consistent tracking. Simplicity ensures that checking progress becomes almost automatic, a daily ritual that reinforces the work already done. Identify the most meaningful metrics for your goal. Not every detail matters. Select indicators that directly reflect the outcomes you want to achieve. If the goal is writing a book, track word count or chapters completed. If the goal is fitness, track minutes of exercise, distance, or repetitions. If the goal is learning a language, track new words mastered or practice sessions completed. Metrics should measure actions that matter most, not peripheral activity. This focus ensures tracking remains motivational rather than overwhelming. Consistency in tracking is essential. Recording progress should be habitual, tied to an existing part of the routine. Immediately after completing a workout, writing session, or savings deposit, mark the achievement. When tracking becomes a ritual, it reinforces discipline and creates a visual narrative of progress. Each mark on a chart, each tally on a checklist, tells the brain that the effort is real, measurable, and accumulating. Visual representation amplifies impact. Charts, graphs, and streaks provide immediate feedback, allowing the brain to recognize patterns. Seeing a growing line of completed actions or an unbroken streak creates satisfaction and momentum. Humans respond to visual patterns. Progress that is visual feels more tangible and real than progress that is merely imagined. When you see the evidence, the mind naturally seeks to continue the pattern, reinforcing the habit. Keep the tracking method accessible and visible. Place habit trackers on your desk, charts on the wall, or checklists in your notebook where they are unavoidable. Visibility serves as a continuous reminder of commitment and reduces the chance of forgetting or skipping recording. Out of sight often means out of mind, so integrate tracking into the environment where work occurs. The more accessible it is, the more likely it will be used consistently. Make tracking a tool for reflection, not judgment. The goal is to observe and adjust, not punish. At the end of each week, glance at your tracked data to identify trends, which days were most productive, which actions were skipped, and where improvements can be made. Reflect on causes, not failures. Adjust routines, timing, or tools to optimize results. Tracking becomes a source of insight and problem solving, rather than a source of stress. Combine quantitative and qualitative tracking when possible. Numbers alone do not capture context or learning. Note challenges, insights, or emotional responses alongside metrics. If writing fell short, record why: tiredness, distraction, or clarity issue. If exercise lagged, note energy level or environmental obstacles. This combination creates a richer picture of performance and informs smarter adjustments to routines, improving efficiency and sustainability. Automation can reduce friction in tracking. Digital tools can automatically log activity, generate charts, and summarize data. Step counters, calorie trackers, document word counters, and project management apps create real-time feedback without manual entry. However, automation should not replace intentional reflection. Even when tracking is automatic, reviewing and interpreting the results remains essential for growth and improvement. Tracking also strengthens identity. Each recorded action reinforces the belief that you are the type of person who follows through. A visible record of consistency over time builds self-trust. Identity grows not from one successful day, but from the accumulation of evidence that you are capable of maintaining effort, executing plans, and achieving small victories consistently. This internal reinforcement compounds over time, making adherence easier. Use streaks strategically to encourage momentum. Consecutive days of completed action produce a psychological force that discourages breaking the chain. Each day builds pressure to maintain the pattern. However, Balance streaks with flexibility. A missed day is not failure. It is data. Adjust and resume immediately. The streak concept works best when it motivates continuation rather than generating fear or guilt. Break larger goals into incremental checkpoints. Tracking progress is most effective when it highlights small, achievable milestones rather than distant, abstract objectives. Each checkpoint reached provides a sense of completion and encourages continued effort. Incremental tracking allows the brain to experience repeated satisfaction, reinforcing the habit loop and increasing resilience during long-term pursuits. Review progress in relation to effort. Metrics should highlight consistency and quality of action, rather than external outcomes that may fluctuate beyond control. Completing the daily writing goal matters more than instantaneous book sales. Finishing the planned workout matters more than immediate strength gains. Focusing on controllable inputs reduces frustration and sustains motivation, allowing the system of tracking to remain a source of empowerment rather than discouragement. Adjust the tracking method over time as needed. The first tool chosen may work for initial stages but may require refinement as habits strengthen or complexity grows. For example, a simple checklist may evolve into a spreadsheet with additional metrics for insight, or a digital app may replace a notebook for efficiency. Tracking tools should serve progress, not create extra work. Regularly evaluate whether the current method provides clarity, simplicity, and motivation, and tweak accordingly. Tracking provides a record that protects against doubt. On days when confidence wavers, the visual proof of past accomplishments reminds you that consistency is possible. Reviewing completed actions demonstrates capability and reinforces momentum. This evidence-based reassurance helps prevent discouragement and sustains forward motion during periods of low energy or high stress. Progress tracking creates accountability, even if only to oneself. Recording results daily produces a subtle social contract. You are responsible for marking what is done. If shared with a mentor, friend, or group, this effect multiplies as external observation increases adherence. Accountability reinforces the habit loop, strengthens identity, and ensures that small daily actions accumulate into meaningful results. Tracking also enables strategic planning. By reviewing patterns, you can identify peak performance periods, common obstacles, and efficient sequences. This insight allows optimization of routines and allocation of energy. Without tracking, decisions rely on memory, which is inaccurate and biased. Clear records empower informed adjustments that lead to faster, more sustainable progress. Begin by selecting one key behavior to track. Choose a simple metric that directly reflects the desired outcome. Record it daily, visibly, and consistently. At the end of each week, review the results. Note patterns and make small adjustments. Expand tracking gradually to other high-value behaviors, creating a system that captures progress in multiple areas of life. Over time, this becomes a framework for continuous growth, clarity, and achievement. Tracking progress is not about micromanagement or perfection. It is about visibility, insight, and momentum. By creating a simple, consistent, and actionable system, effort becomes measurable, consistency becomes visible, and growth becomes inevitable. The accumulation of these small, tracked actions over weeks and months produces results that appear monumental in hindsight. What begins as a simple mark on a page transforms into undeniable proof that deliberate effort, tracked with clarity, leads to mastery and meaningful accomplishment. Number 6. Create backups for weekdays. Life does not operate in a perfect rhythm. Some days energy wanes, circumstances collide, and motivation falters. The gap between intention and execution widens during these times, threatening consistency and long-term goals. This is where a critical principle comes into play: creating backups for weekdays. Backups are not excuses, they are strategic safety nets, designed to maintain momentum even when circumstances or internal states are less than ideal. They ensure that progress never fully stops and that resilience becomes habitual rather than situational. The first step in building backups is acknowledging that weekdays are inevitable. Resilience is not demonstrated by avoiding hardship, but by designing systems that accommodate it. Everyone experiences fatigue, distraction, or unforeseen obligations. By planning in advance for these fluctuations, the goal is to convert potential derailments into manageable adjustments. Weekdays do not represent failure. They are a normal part of any sustained effort. Preparing for them allows continuity, which compounds into long-term achievement. Identify the minimum effective dose for each essential action. On strong days, a workout might last an hour, a writing session might span 1,000 words, or a study session might consume 2 focused hours. On weekdays, the objective is to reduce the action to the smallest unit that still counts as progress. Even 10 minutes of exercise, 1 paragraph of writing, or 20 minutes of review ensures that momentum continues. The principle is not intensity but continuity. Small, consistent efforts on low-energy days preserve identity and habit. Backups are more effective when integrated into routines rather than treated as optional. Predefine what counts as a weekday action in advance. Decide, for example, that on low-energy mornings, the workout consists of bodyweight exercises instead of a full gym session, or that writing 1 paragraph satisfies the day's requirement. When the backup is predetermined, hesitation disappears, execution becomes automatic, and the weekday does not derail progress. Prepare resources and environments that facilitate reduced action. If energy is low, removing obstacles ensures that even minimal engagement is feasible. For instance, keeping resistance bands ready at home allows exercise without a commute. Having a writing template or pre-outlined section makes producing a paragraph effortless. When the first step is simple, it is far more likely to occur. Backups are only useful if they are immediately accessible. Preparation turns intention into execution with minimal friction. Create mental permission for lower output days. Many people experience guilt when they cannot perform at full capacity. This guilt leads to avoidance, which breaks momentum entirely. Backups serve as legitimate pre-approved actions that count. 10 minutes of effort is recognized as valuable, sustaining progress while protecting confidence. By consciously defining what counts, you prevent small disruptions from snowballing into stagnation. Strategically use weekday backups to reinforce identity. Even minimal action communicates to the brain, I am someone who shows up. Identity is not built solely in high-performance moments. It is reinforced by the commitment to act even when conditions are suboptimal. Each executed backup action preserves alignment with values and goals, protecting consistency and self-trust. Backups should be versatile and adaptable. Weekdays vary in cause: fatigue, travel, emotional strain, or external obligations. A library of options ensures that some form of progress is achievable under any condition. For example, if a scheduled run is impossible, a 10-minute walk around the block, stretching routine, or mobility exercises can serve as a substitute. Adaptability ensures that the system is resilient to disruption rather than rigid and brittle. Integrate backups into planning cycles. Weekly or monthly reviews should consider potential weekdays and ensure sufficient margin for continuity. This prevents overloading schedules, which increases the likelihood of skipped tasks. Planning for weekdays is proactive, not reactive, and ensures that overall goals remain achievable, even in imperfect conditions. Automation and pre-commitment amplify the effectiveness of backups. Set alarms, reminders, or visual cues that trigger the low-effort action when conditions indicate a weak day. For example, if energy drops below a certain threshold or a meeting runs long, a reminder can prompt the reduced action. These pre-commitments reduce reliance on fluctuating motivation and ensure execution regardless of temporary obstacles. Backups also strengthen psychological resilience. Knowing that there is a minimum action to fall back on reduces fear of failure. The mind is more willing to begin tasks when the consequence of low energy is mitigated. This creates a mental environment where effort persists because the fear of complete stagnation is removed. Confidence and consistency increase simultaneously. Measure progress of weekday actions alongside full-effort actions. Tracking every small action ensures that low-output days are recognized as meaningful. Cumulative micro-actions maintain streaks, visual progress, and motivational reinforcement. Without recording these efforts, the mind underestimates continuity, weakening perceived progress. Every action, no matter how small, contributes to the overall trajectory. Backups are not limited to time or effort reductions. They can also involve simplification of the task itself. On difficult days, complex tasks can be broken into subtasks that are easier to complete. Writing an article, focus on outlining key points instead of producing a complete draft. Studying for an exam, review one chapter rather than tackling the full syllabus. Reducing complexity ensures that the action is achievable, sustaining engagement and habit formation. The existence of backups encourages experimentation with efficiency. When the low-effort alternative works, it sometimes replaces unnecessarily intense routines, revealing more sustainable ways to achieve goals. Testing reduced action methods can uncover ways to streamline work, preserving energy without sacrificing outcomes. Weekday backups often highlight optimization opportunities overlooked during peak performance sessions. Use backups to normalize imperfection. Life is inherently inconsistent. Expecting every day to be ideal is a formula for frustration. By codifying reduced effort alternatives, the system teaches flexibility without abandoning standards. Over time, weekday strategies reduce anxiety about missing deadlines or failing to meet expectations. Consistency becomes the priority, not perfection. Backups serve as an insurance policy for cumulative progress. Missing a day completely is far more damaging than performing a reduced version. Even minimal execution keeps the habit loop intact, reinforces identity, and maintains momentum. This incremental continuity compounds, ensuring that weekdays do not accumulate into regression. Finally, integrate backups into a broader mindset of long-term resilience. Goals are achieved not in bursts of perfection, but through persistent, adaptive effort. Backups are an essential component of systems that tolerate human variability while maintaining forward motion. Over months and years, this approach ensures that goals progress steadily, habits strengthen, and confidence endures regardless of temporary setbacks. Start by identifying one action critical to your growth, and define the minimal viable version of that action for low-energy days. Prepare resources, pre-commit to execution, and ensure visibility. Track every execution, whether full or reduced effort, and refine the backup as needed. Over time, the combination of normal and backup actions produces a system that is impervious to occasional weakness. Weekdays cease to derail progress. They become manageable, predictable variations that the system effortlessly accommodates. Creating backups is not about lowering standards. It is about designing continuity. It is the difference between a system that collapses under pressure and a system that flows regardless of circumstance. Each backup action is a reinforcement of commitment, a protection of momentum, and a testament to deliberate planning. Over time, the cumulative effect of maintaining even the smallest actions on weekdays produces consistent growth, resilience, and the fulfillment of goals that might otherwise falter in the face of life's inevitable unpredictability. Number 7. Use environment to shape behavior. The environment is far more influential than most people realize. Every object, sound, and arrangement subtly guides behavior, often without conscious awareness. Environments can either support productivity and growth, or act as silent obstacles, draining attention, energy, and focus. Harnessing the power of your surroundings allows behavior to be shaped almost effortlessly, turning intentions into actions without relying solely on willpower. Success is not just a matter of discipline. It is a matter of designing spaces that nudge the mind and body toward consistent, meaningful action. The first principle of environmental design is clarity. A cluttered or chaotic space increases cognitive load, forcing the brain to filter distractions before it can focus on important tasks. When the environment is organized, each object has a purpose and a place. The brain spends less energy deciding where to look, what to do first, or what is necessary. An orderly space reduces hesitation and primes action. A clear desk, a tidy room, or a streamlined digital workspace creates mental clarity that directly supports behavior. Visual cues are powerful shapers of action. The placement of objects can remind, prompt, or block behaviors. A water bottle on the desk encourages hydration. A journal in sight promotes reflection. A stack of books on a bedside table invites reading. Conversely, unhealthy snacks or distracting devices, left within reach, often trigger counterproductive behaviors. By intentionally arranging your environment, you remove barriers to desired habits and introduce constant reminders of what matters most. Environment shapes habits through accessibility. The easier an action is to perform, the more likely it will occur. If you want to practice guitar, keep the instrument on a stand in the living room rather than in a closet. If you aim to meditate, create a dedicated corner with a cushion and no distractions. The path of least resistance becomes the default choice, and when positive actions are simple to start, they are performed consistently. Conversely, increasing friction for undesired behaviors discourages them naturally. Out of sight, out of mind is not a cliché. It is a practical strategy. Remove distractions or temptations from immediate reach. Unplug social media apps during work hours. Keep junk food out of the kitchen, and store devices in another room when focus is needed. The environment acts as a silent gatekeeper, controlling behavior by reducing the likelihood of deviation from intended action. Sensory stimuli shape motivation and focus. Light, sound, temperature, and even scent influence the ease with which tasks are performed. Bright, natural light can increase alertness and productivity, while soft, warm lighting promotes relaxation. Background noise can either enhance focus or distract, depending on the individual. Temperature affects energy levels and comfort. Recognizing and manipulating these subtle cues allows the environment to support the psychological and physical states necessary for optimal action. Routines are reinforced by consistent environmental signals. When a space is associated with a particular action, the mind begins to anticipate the behavior automatically. A designated writing desk triggers the act of writing. A specific walking path signals exercise. Over time, environmental cues create automaticity, reducing reliance on motivation and willpower. The space itself becomes a trigger, embedding habits in a natural and reliable way. Digital environments are equally critical. The organization of files, apps, and notifications shapes productivity and attention. A cluttered desktop, constant pop-ups, or multiple competing tabs can fragment focus and reduce output. Streamline digital spaces that prioritize important tasks, limit distractions, and provide clear pathways for action. Encourage consistent execution. Efficiency is a product of both physical and virtual surroundings. Social environment influences behavior profoundly. People naturally mirror the habits, attitudes, and energy levels of those around them. Surrounding yourself with individuals who embody discipline, curiosity, or creativity fosters similar traits. Conversely, consistently engaging with negativity, complacency, or distraction can erode focus and motivation. Strategic selection of social context, co-working groups, accountability partners, or supportive peers enhances the likelihood of executing desired behaviors. Environment also shapes energy management. Arrange tasks and spaces to match natural energy fluctuations. Place high-effort activities in locations where focus is maximized, and low-energy tasks in areas conducive to minimal effort. For instance, morning hours might be reserved for concentrated work in a bright, quiet office, while evenings are suited for lighter, more relaxed tasks in a comfortable, low-stimulation space. Matching the environment to energy states reduces resistance and increases the likelihood of sustained effort. Create micro-environments within broader spaces. Even in shared or chaotic areas, small zones can be dedicated to specific actions. A corner for reading, a table for writing, a shelf for supplies creates psychological separation between tasks, reducing cognitive conflict and improving execution. These microenvironments act as anchors for focus, turning ordinary spaces into powerful behavioral tools. Consistency in environmental cues strengthens identity. Actions performed repeatedly in a specific context reinforce self-perception. Exercising in the same location, studying at the same desk, or writing in the same space repeatedly tells the brain, This is what I do here. Over time, the behavior becomes automatic in that environment, and identity aligns with action. The environment not only supports behavior, but communicates values and priorities to the subconscious mind. Environmental adjustments can also support recovery and resilience. Spaces that encourage relaxation, reflection, and decompression enhance mental stamina and reduce burnout. Comfortable chairs, calming colors, plants, or quiet corners allow the mind to recharge, making subsequent work more effective. A well-designed environment balances productivity and restoration, maintaining sustainable energy levels over the long term. Leverage environmental redundancy. Multiple cues for the same action increase reliability. For example, placing a water bottle on the desk, a glass on the table, and a reminder on your phone all prompt hydration. Redundancy ensures that if one cue is ignored, another compensates, maintaining consistency and reducing reliance on fragile motivation. Regularly audit the environment for hidden friction points. Small obstacles, disorganization, or outdated tools silently reduce productivity. Identify and eliminate these sources of resistance, clearing unnecessary objects, simplifying access to essential tools, and aligning space with goals ensures that the environment continuously facilitates rather than hinders action. Use the environment to create momentum. Sequence spaces in a way that guides behavior naturally from one action to another. Place cues and tools strategically so that completing one task naturally leads to the next. A journal on the bedside table can prompt reflection, followed by a checklist in sight for planning the day. Thoughtful sequencing turns movement through space into structured, productive behavior. Start by observing where the environment currently supports or hinders your goals. Identify key areas, physical, digital, social, and analyze the effect of each element. Remove obstacles, add cues, optimize accessibility, and adjust sensory factors. Test changes, observe behavioral shifts, and refine arrangements. Over time, small environmental adjustments accumulate, producing profound improvements in consistency, motivation, and overall performance. Using the environment to shape behavior is not about rigidity or artificial control. It is about alignment. When surroundings are strategically designed, actions flow naturally, effort is minimized, and habits are reinforced without conscious strain. The environment becomes an ally, quietly guiding attention, energy, and decisions toward outcomes that matter. Over time, deliberate environmental design transforms the spaces you inhabit into a silent but powerful system for achievement, growth, and self-mastery. Number 8. Review systems weekly for upgrades. Systems are the backbone of consistent achievement, but even the strongest systems are not self-sustaining without reflection and refinement. Progress is rarely linear, and conditions constantly change, both internally and externally. Weekly review is the practice of examining your processes, assessing effectiveness, and implementing improvements. It is a deliberate pause to evaluate what is working, what is failing, and where adjustments are needed to maintain momentum and ensure continued alignment with long-term goals. Without this reflection, even well-designed systems slowly decay, efficiency drops, and effort begins to slip into wasted motion. A weekly review begins with observation. Take stock of what occurred in the past 7 days without judgment or bias. Look at completed actions, missteps, deviations, and outcomes. Recording these observations objectively provides clarity on patterns. For instance, you might notice that mornings are consistently productive, but afternoons often involve distractions. By observing behaviors in a structured way, you gain insight into the natural rhythms, bottlenecks, and friction points that affect performance. Next, evaluate the effectiveness of each component of your system. A system consists of multiple interconnected parts, routines, triggers, tools, backups, and environmental arrangements. Each part should serve a clear purpose and contribute to forward movement. Identify elements that consistently produce results and those that generate friction, waste energy, or fail to support your goals. Effectiveness is measured by the system's ability to produce intended outcomes with minimal unnecessary effort. Components that do not meet this standard require modification, replacement, or elimination. Analyze patterns of failure carefully. Missed actions, procrastination, or reduced output often reveal flaws in the system rather than personal weakness. Weekly reviews allow you to diagnose these issues before they compound. Perhaps a task is scheduled at an energy-depleting time, or the preparation is insufficient, creating friction. The goal is to identify the root cause of disruption and implement targeted upgrades. This analytical approach transforms obstacles into opportunities for improvement, rather than sources of discouragement. Incorporate quantitative and qualitative feedback. Metrics, charts, and logs provide hard data on performance, while subjective experience offers context. Review not only what was accomplished, but also how it felt to execute tasks. Was the workflow smooth or cumbersome? Did the routine enhance focus or create fatigue? This combination of data and experience ensures that improvements are practical and sustainable, rather than purely theoretical. Adjust systems incrementally rather than radically. Weekly reviews are about refinement, not overhaul. Small manageable changes compound over time, leading to significant efficiency gains. For instance, shifting the timing of a daily habit by 15 minutes, reorganizing a workspace for smoother access, or tweaking a trigger can produce measurable improvement without disrupting the overall system. Incremental upgrades preserve continuity while enhancing effectiveness. Involve preparation in the review process. Before examining the system, gather all relevant materials, progress logs, task lists, calendars, and notes. Having a clear record of activity allows evaluation to be precise and accurate. The clearer the data, the more informed the adjustments. A well-prepared review session ensures that decisions are grounded in reality rather than memory or assumptions. Consider both constraints and resources during the review. Some inefficiencies emerge due to external limitations, such as time, energy, or access to tools. Identify these constraints and determine if system upgrades can mitigate them. For example, if commuting reduces productivity, consider remote work solutions or task adjustments. If energy dips consistently at a certain hour, realign demanding tasks to higher energy periods. Effective system upgrades work with constraints rather than against them. Prioritize upgrades by impact. Not every adjustment yields meaningful results. Focus first on changes that remove friction, amplify efficiency, or enhance consistency. A minor tweak that saves 10 seconds per task may be less valuable than an adjustment that prevents daily procrastination. Weekly review is an opportunity to optimize high-leverage aspects of the system first, ensuring that effort yields maximum benefit. Document improvements and new strategies. Write down the changes implemented during the review and the reasoning behind them. This record creates accountability and allows assessment of whether the adjustments achieve the intended effect. Documentation also prevents repeating past mistakes and provides a reference for future refinements. A well-maintained log of system upgrades becomes a roadmap for continuous progress and growth. Integrate flexibility into the system. Weekly reviews often reveal situations where rigidity hinders progress. Build mechanisms that allow for adaptation without breaking consistency. Backup actions, alternative workflows, or adjustable schedules accommodate fluctuations in energy, environment, or unexpected disruptions. A flexible system is resilient and capable of maintaining forward momentum, even under challenging circumstances. Involve environmental adjustments in the review. Consider how surroundings influenced performance over the week. Did clutter impede focus? Did placement of tools streamline action? Did digital organization support efficiency? Adjustments to the environment are an integral component of system upgrades, ensuring that the physical and digital spaces remain aligned with behavior and objectives. Review interactions between habits and routines. Systems are interconnected, and a failure in one area can cascade into others. Assess how routines interact. Do morning habits prepare you for afternoon tasks? Are triggers aligned to reinforce subsequent actions? Understanding these connections allows you to optimize sequences for smooth execution and reduce friction across multiple behaviors. Use the review to reinforce identity alignment. Each system should reflect the person you aim to become, Ask whether routines, triggers, and habits are consistent with your values and long-term vision. Misalignment between identity and system design creates internal resistance, while alignment produces effortless engagement. Weekly reviews are a chance to ensure that the system not only produces output, but also reinforces the identity you wish to embody. Evaluate resource allocation during review. Consider whether time, energy, and attention are invested in areas that produce meaningful results. Inefficiencies often emerge when resources are misaligned with priorities. Adjust schedules, streamline tasks, or reallocate focus to ensure that effort corresponds to the highest value actions. System upgrades are most effective when they enhance leverage, rather than simply increase activity. Include reflection on motivation and emotional response. Systems are not purely mechanical. They interact with psychological states. Examine how enjoyable, frustrating, or stressful specific components were. Adjustments that reduce negative emotional response increase adherence and sustainability. Enhancing intrinsic motivation through thoughtful system design ensures consistency without relying solely on external discipline. Integrate feedback loops for ongoing improvement. Weekly review is one of many iterations in a continuous process. Implement mechanisms to capture observations throughout the week, brief notes on friction points, reminders of successes, or insights into timing. These ongoing inputs enrich the weekly review, creating a self-reinforcing cycle of refinement and evolution. Test hypotheses during the review. If a change is proposed, consider a trial period to assess effectiveness. For example, adjusting a trigger, modifying a backup action, or altering environmental cues can be tested for 1 week. Observe results objectively and decide whether to adopt, modify, or discard the change. This experimental approach ensures that upgrades are practical and evidence-based rather than speculative. Weekly reviews cultivate mindfulness about systems. Reflection encourages active engagement with the mechanics of behavior rather than passive reliance on routines. By examining performance, understanding friction points, and implementing improvements, you transform systems into living structures that evolve with experience, needs, and goals. This practice enhances both competence and awareness, making personal growth deliberate and directed. Begin by scheduling a specific time each week dedicated to reviewing systems. Gather data, observe patterns, analyze outcomes, and plan incremental improvements. Implement at least one actionable change immediately to reinforce the habit of ongoing refinement. Over weeks, these consistent upgrades compound, resulting in more efficient, resilient, and aligned systems that reliably support progress toward goals. Reviewing systems weekly is not a bureaucratic task. It is an act of mastery. It allows awareness of friction points, optimization of routines, reinforcement of identity, and proactive adaptation to evolving conditions. Systems that are observed, analyzed, and upgraded continuously remain effective, responsive, and aligned with long-term objectives. The discipline of reflection transforms effort into structured progress, ensuring that each week builds on the last, and that growth becomes predictable, deliberate, and inevitable. Number 9. Replace motivation with repeatable processes. Motivation is often praised as the key to success, but it is unreliable, fleeting, and inconsistent. One day, it pushes you forward. The next, it disappears. Relying on motivation is like trying to row a boat with a paddle made of water. Effort is wasted chasing something ephemeral. Sustainable achievement does not come from sporadic bursts of energy or inspiration. It comes from designing repeatable processes that produce results regardless of emotional state. Processes replace the need for motivation with a predictable, dependable structure for action. A repeatable process is a defined series of steps that can be executed consistently without requiring extraordinary energy or enthusiasm. When a behavior is embedded in a system, it becomes automatic. The moment you follow the same procedure each day, your brain recognizes it as familiar, requiring less deliberation and reducing the temptation to delay. The outcome of this approach is stability. Even on days when willpower is low, action occurs because the process itself drives the behavior. The first step in replacing motivation with process is to clearly define the actions required to achieve a goal. Abstract goals like get fit or write more are insufficient because they rely on inspiration to initiate behavior. A process breaks the goal into tangible, repeatable steps. For fitness, a process might include waking at a specific time, doing a set number of exercises, and tracking completion. For writing, a process could involve opening a document, writing a predetermined number of words, and reviewing the draft. Each action is predictable, measurable, and executable independent of mood. Consistency is the heart of process-driven achievement. By performing the same actions repeatedly, the brain develops pathways that streamline execution. The initial resistance that accompanies starting tasks diminishes over time because the process becomes a habit. Momentum builds naturally, and behavior becomes self-sustaining. Once a process is firmly established, motivation is no longer required. System itself generates action. Processes also reduce cognitive load. Every time a decision must be made about when, where, or how to act, energy is spent, and hesitation can arise. A well-designed, repeatable process removes these decisions by specifying context, sequence, and method. The moment of initiation is clear and predetermined, leaving no space for excuses or procrastination. Efficiency rises because the mind is free to focus on execution rather than deliberation. Repetition fosters mastery. Performing a process consistently allows skills to develop incrementally. Mastery grows naturally as small, repeated actions accumulate over time. For instance, practicing a musical instrument daily using a structured routine leads to measurable improvement without relying on sporadic bursts of motivation. The system transforms mundane repetition into compounded progress, where each execution is a building block toward competence and confidence. Process design should account for variations in energy, attention, and context. On high-energy days, full execution of a process may be feasible. On low-energy days, a minimal version should be predefined. For example, a full workout might take an hour, but a short, focused version of 10 minutes can maintain continuity. Similarly, writing one paragraph on a low-energy day keeps momentum alive. Processes are resilient when designed to adapt to real-world fluctuations without breaking continuity. Clarity in process steps is critical. Each action should be specific, observable, and measurable. Vague instructions invite procrastination and reliance on motivation. Instead of exercise today, a process might read, do 20 push-ups, 15 squats, and a 2-minute plank immediately after breakfast. Instead of write more, the process could specify, draft 300 words between 9 a.m. and 10 a.m. at the desk. The specificity eliminates ambiguity and ensures execution even in the absence of inspiration. Processes benefit from embedded triggers. Linking steps to environmental or habitual cues makes execution automatic. For instance, leaving a yoga mat in a visible location triggers stretching. A notebook on the desk triggers writing. When the environment and routines are aligned with the process, action occurs naturally. Motivation becomes unnecessary because the trigger itself prompts behavior, and the process is already defined for immediate execution. Tracking progress reinforces process adherence. Even small visual confirmations of completed steps create a sense of accomplishment, which reinforces continuity. Checklists, progress charts, or simple daily logs provide feedback that strengthens engagement with the process. The brain begins to associate process completion with satisfaction and forward movement, further reducing reliance on fluctuating motivation. Processes also protect against burnout and distraction. By defining a repeatable system, effort becomes predictable, and the mind can focus on execution rather than constant evaluation. Distractions are less disruptive because the steps are embedded in the environment and habit. Energy is allocated efficiently, reducing mental strain while sustaining progress over extended periods. Accountability amplifies the effectiveness of processes. Sharing your system with a partner, coach, or peer group increases adherence. The social expectation interacts with the repeatable process, making skipping actions less likely. Accountability is strongest when combined with a predefined process, because there is no ambiguity about what should be done. Execution becomes a natural response to both internal structure and external processes can be optimized through weekly or periodic review. Even the most well-designed system benefits from reflection. Identify steps that create friction, redundant actions or missed opportunities, and refine them to increase efficiency. Small, thoughtful adjustments strengthen the process and maintain alignment with evolving goals. Over time, continuous improvement compounds results, keeping the system robust, effective, and flexible. Integration of multiple processes produces synergy, a network of repeatable actions across different domains. Fitness, work, learning, and personal growth creates an ecosystem of momentum. Each process supports others indirectly, reinforcing overall discipline and reducing reliance on motivation in all areas. Systems work best when they interact, amplifying outcomes beyond the sum of individual processes. Emotional states no longer dictate behavior once processes are established. Motivation rises and falls naturally, but action continues because it is embedded in a structured routine. Even when feeling tired, distracted, or discouraged, the predefined steps guide execution. Dependable progress builds self-trust and confidence, creating a feedback loop where trust in the system replaces dependence on fleeting inspiration. To implement process-driven action, start with one high-leverage behavior. Define clear, repeatable steps that can be executed daily. Establish environmental triggers, track completion, and allow a minimal version for low-energy days. Review weekly and refine incrementally. Over time, expand the approach to other goals, creating a network of processes that function independently of motivation, producing predictable, sustainable results. Replacing motivation with repeatable processes transforms the approach to personal achievement. It removes the unpredictability of relying on emotions, creates consistent momentum, and builds habits that compound over time. Processes generate action automatically, reduce cognitive load, and embed growth into the fabric of daily life. In this way, long-term goals are no longer subject to the whims of inspiration. They become the inevitable outcome of deliberate, repeatable behavior, executed consistently, day after day. Number 10. Build habits that protect priorities. Priorities define the life you intend to lead, yet they are constantly under siege from distractions, obligations, and internal impulses. Protecting what matters most requires more than intention. It requires deliberate habits that act as safeguards. Habits are powerful because they operate automatically, shaping behavior without constant thought or effort. When habits are designed to defend priorities, they serve as a personal system of boundaries, ensuring that essential goals receive consistent attention and energy, even amidst chaos. The first step is clarity. Before building protective habits, priorities must be defined with precision. Knowing exactly what is most important creates a benchmark for decision. Without clarity, habits can become misaligned, expending energy on tasks that feel urgent but are ultimately insignificant. Define your priorities in concrete terms, whether that involves family time, creative work, health, financial goals, or personal growth. These become the foundation upon which protective habits are constructed. Once priorities are clear, design habits that naturally safeguard them. Habits function best when integrated into daily routines, requiring minimal deliberation. For instance, if writing a book is a priority, a habit might be to write the first thing in the morning before distractions arise. If exercise is critical, a habit could be to schedule workouts at the same time each day and treat them as non-negotiable appointments. Protective habits transform intentions into automatic actions that reinforce what matters most. Consistency is the key to protection. Habits must be repeated regularly to form automaticity. The brain conserves energy by leaning on familiar patterns, so embedding priority-focused habits into daily life ensures that essential actions are performed even when motivation is low. Over time, consistency converts fragile intention into durable practice, creating a natural defense against the daily pressures that threaten to steal attention from core priorities. Design habits with built-in triggers that prompt action. Environmental cues, time-based reminders, or preceding actions can serve as signals to execute the habit. For example, placing a journal on your bedside table triggers reflection, or beginning the workday by reviewing the most important task signals focus on that priority. Triggers reduce reliance on memory or motivation and ensure that protective habits are activated reliably. Eliminate friction for priority-protecting habits. Remove obstacles that make essential actions difficult to perform. If morning exercise is a priority, lay out workout clothes the night before and ensure equipment is ready. If focused work is essential, clear the workspace of distractions and silence notifications. Reducing resistance allows habits to flow naturally and strengthens adherence over time. Backup strategies reinforce priority habits. Even when circumstances make the standard habit difficult, alternatives maintain continuity. For example, a planned run might be replaced by a short home workout, or a meditation session might be substituted with a brief breathing exercise. These backups ensure that even on challenging days, protective habits continue to reinforce priorities rather than disappearing entirely. Combine habits to create a supportive network. Protective habits are stronger when they reinforce one another. A morning routine that includes planning the day, exercise, and focused work protects multiple priorities simultaneously. Each habit strengthens the others, creating a cohesive system that shields attention and energy from distractions. This network effect amplifies the impact of individual habits on long-term goals. Reflect regularly on habit effectiveness. Weekly or periodic reviews help identify which habits successfully protect priorities and which need adjustment. Assess whether habits align with evolving goals, maintain momentum, and minimize friction. Adjust frequency, timing, or structure to ensure that each habit continues to serve its intended purpose effectively. Reflection transforms habits from static routines into adaptive, resilient tools. Accountability enhances the durability of protective habits. Sharing progress with mentors, peers, or accountability partners reinforces adherence. When habits are visible to others, skipping them is less likely, and the social reinforcement strengthens commitment. This external layer of protection ensures that priorities are defended even when internal discipline fluctuates. Habits also serve as a boundary-setting mechanism. They establish clear rules for behavior that preserve focus and energy for what matters most. For instance, a habit of shutting down work notifications after a certain hour protects personal time, while a habit of dedicating the first hour of the day to deep work safeguards creative priorities. By creating structural boundaries, habits act as automatic gatekeepers against interruptions and distractions. Design habits to reinforce identity. Actions aligned with priorities shape self-perception. Each execution signals, consciously and subconsciously, "This is who I am." Over time, identity and priorities converge, making protective behaviors feel natural rather than forced. The alignment between habits and self-concept enhances persistence and reduces resistance. Make habits visible to strengthen consistency. Placing visual cues in the environment reminds and reinforces priority-focused behavior. A calendar with marked accomplishments, a prominently displayed journal, or a dedicated workspace signals commitment to what matters most. Visibility reinforces the habit loop and ensures that priorities remain salient throughout daily life. Habits should be flexible enough to accommodate real-world variability without losing purpose. Life is unpredictable, and rigid routines can break under pressure. Protective habits are designed to maintain core outcomes, even when modified. A shorter workout, a condensed work session, or a simplified reflection practice still preserves the priority focus. Flexibility ensures sustainability without compromising the integrity of the goal. Energy management is integral to protective habits. Habits that align with natural energy cycles ensure that priorities are addressed when attention and effort are at their peak. High energy periods should be reserved for actions that require focus or creativity, while lower energy periods can support maintenance or simpler tasks. Protecting priorities through habits requires intelligent scheduling, not just repetition. Eliminate competing habits that erode focus. Some behaviors, while neutral or enjoyable, may undermine attention to core priorities. Identify and reduce habits that interfere with essential actions, replacing them with behaviors that reinforce goals. This strategic pruning strengthens the protective function of new habits and preserves mental bandwidth for what truly matters. Integrate feedback mechanisms into habits. Track performance, outcomes, or consistency to reinforce protective behavior. Small markers of progress, like completed checklists, visual streaks, or brief reflections, provide ongoing motivation and highlight the cumulative effect of protective habits. Feedback ensures that the system remains dynamic, engaging, and effective over time. Habits should be sequenced to reinforce priority alignment, performing smaller preparatory actions that lead into larger goal-aligned behaviors creates a smooth pathway for consistent execution. For example, reviewing the day's objectives before work primes focus, while a brief stretching session before intense exercise optimizes physical readiness. Thoughtful sequencing reduces friction and ensures that priorities remain central to daily routine. Start with one high-impact habit to protect a single priority. Execute it consistently until it becomes automatic, then layer additional habits to safeguard other priorities. Gradual implementation prevents overwhelm and ensures that each habit is embedded effectively. Over time, the accumulation of protective habits forms a comprehensive system that continuously shields the most important aspects of life from distraction and drift. Protective habits transform priorities from fragile intentions into consistent realities. By creating routines that operate automatically, supported by triggers, environmental cues, backups, and reflection, the most important goals are defended against the constant erosion of distraction and competing demands. Over time, these habits compound, producing a life where priorities are maintained effortlessly, energy is focused efficiently, and meaningful progress becomes inevitable. The true power of protective habits lies in their ability to work independently of motivation, willpower, or circumstances. They act as self-sustaining guardians of what matters most, ensuring that attention, energy, and action consistently align with the life you intend to lead. When habits are strategically designed, executed, and refined, priorities are no longer vulnerable. They are embedded, defended, and nurtured through deliberate, consistent practice, creating a framework for achievement, fulfillment, and long-term growth.